Hi guys, welcome to another Tribal. Share a little story. We're training up for this big red run coming up at the 27th of June, 250 kilometers through the Simpson Desert. Yeah, crazy, stupid, all those things. But hey, put the goals out there, and that's what they've got to be achieved, right? So this is a 6-day event. The first 4 days we're traveling 42 kilometers a day, and the 5th day we do 84, and the 6th day we do 9. And it certainly is all about the journey. It certainly is about learning more about yourself, learning about your body, learning about what's working, learning about how to tweak. And this is where I want to really focus on today is going through our new leadership model around your own leadership style, around how do we start to look at leadership, how do we start to look at producing high performance teams within your business to really help you scale the business. Because what I've noticed is that no matter if you're the solopreneur, if you're just yourself, or if you've got a team of 50, 60, or 100, is we all need that structure and that systems and processes to really help us, if you're a solopreneur, to do the activity, or if you've got your large teams, to give them structure, guidance, and direction. So what I want to hear from you. If you're listening to the recording of this, comment below in the Facebook feed. What's been some wins for you over the last week? So we've just come off our 30-day challenge and our 30-day sprint, so which has been fantastic. Some really good wins along the way for people, and some really good lessons as well. And this is where utilizing the category wheel really helps you to look at where the focus has been throughout the week. Where are you focusing more? Where do you need to focus more? And it's a stop to take a little bit of a breath and really start to focus on, okay, well, that week was then, this week needs to be here, and what's our strategy moving forward? What are the clear outcomes moving forward? So now we're moving into some education, some content, and we're going to go through a little process here. I'm going to take you through the leadership model. So let's get underway. All right, so let's have a look, and I'm going to show you this model. One sec, we'll bring it up. There we go. So this is a model that we've been building out for the last little while, testing and measuring. So this is the leadership advantage. This is for those in business. I've got here obviously for those in the real estate, principals and directors, but it also works for any style of business because we've tested and measured it in different businesses, and it works. So what happens is that when we start to our businesses off, we have an idea, we have a purpose, we have a thought in our minds of what we want to achieve and where do we want to go. And obviously profit is something that we're all is extremely important when we're growing and leading our business, and also that peace of mind, particularly when we start to grow teams. And there's 3 key areas when building your teams, and this is where the leadership advantage really kicks into play. We have the first part is building your team, and this is looking at different areas within the business, which I'll go through. Then we go through training. How to, you got a team, how do we train the team? And then looking at the leverage. So how do we really leverage the team? So what happens though is that when we don't build the team, it's reliant on you. All right. And that's what happens, is that it becomes reliant on us, and you've pretty much got yourself a job. And when we don't train our team, we've actually got to fix all the problems ourselves. Right? And that's another issue in itself. And then when we don't leverage our team, once again, there's that sense of feeling that we're doing it all yourself. So this is where the challenge is actually really looking at these 3 key areas of building, training, and really leveraging your team to really help you to fast track your business. And I'm going to take you through this process. So what happens is that when we build and train your team, you actually have more time. And when you train and leverage your team, you start to scale your team and your business. And then when we build and have leverage, that's when the growth. And by combining all those three areas of build, train, and leverage, we have profit, we have purpose, and we have peace of mind. So I'm going to take you through the process of what each area consists of. So firstly, we have the build component, and there's three key components when building your team. We have recruitment, we have onboarding, and we have culture. And I'm going to go through each week over the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to deep dive and give you some nice, cool frameworks that we've been working on for your business so you can actually plug and play straight away. We've just did some great recordings and some great new articles around recruitment and what people usually miss out with recruitment. There's some three key areas that we're going to share with you today, and the fourth added bonus one as well. Then we have the training part, and this is where we have your vision, mission, and values, the buy-in to the team, and how do we actually do that? Because you see so many businesses have their vision and mission and value on their website or in their office. But what does that actually mean? I started working with a business a little while ago, and I asked the senior managers, I said, what's the vision, mission, and values? And they looked at me and they're going, you could hear crickets, right? And so this process is now, it's like, well, let's start to live and breathe. Let's start to have this as part of our training process, have this part of our decision-making process. And the next part of training is the KPIs. It was funny, I got a call from an old client yesterday. He goes, I think we need to get you back in. I said, okay, cool. Why? He goes, well, we're at that stage, we're doing a couple mil and we're sort of turning into a mid-tier company because now I've got this huge team around me and we've got no KPIs. So I went, yes, we need to have a conversation real quick, right? And so now we're working with him and his business to really start to map out his KPIs and have that buy-in from his team. Then we have the tools. So what tools are required to really train your team? This is both online tools. So what can they do to, are you shooting videos on training? Do you have a library where they can access? Do you have training, a face-to-face type of training that you can actually help them with whatever their role is? Then we have leverage, and the leverage component is that we start to manage our team. And now what happens with this management process, a lot of businesses out there, they'll go, oh yeah, I've done here, you've signed on, here's your login details, and away you go. There's the biggest mistake that most business owners make is your team are like your children. There will be ups and downs and lefts and rights, and you'll be coming and going, and there'll be tears and there'll be hugs and everything in between, right? But it's a management process, right? But how do you do that? And we're going to take you through the steps on how to effectively manage and lead your teams. Then we have retain. Particularly now when we start to work with the younger generation, the Gen Ys and so forth, is they like to chop and change a lot. But why? And the reason why is because there's no compelling future. What's your compelling future with your team? Do they have a compelling future with you? How have you mapped that out? What's that journey with that team member? Can they see themselves with you for 12 months, 2 years, 5 years? But what is that process? What's that big, shiny goal that they're looking to achieve? But more importantly, what are the key milestones so they know that they're on the right track? So how do we retain? And then next bit is on leverage is duplication. So how do we start to duplicate this time and time again so we know part of our people plan is that, okay, when we hit this milestone within the business, we need to be doing that with our people. When we hit that, we need to be hitting that, and so forth and so forth. So often I see business owners is they start the strategy, which is fantastic, sets the big goals, but there's no people plan around it. What is your people plan, and actually how have you mapped out your revenue growth with your people growth? What's the capacity of each person? Do you know that productivity capacity? What is that limit before we need to find in? And we're going to go through that over these next couple of weeks to really give you the tools and the frameworks to work within. So out of those three key areas, the build, train, and leverage, I want to hear from you. Just send me a little chat. Where do you feel that you need the most help right now? Out of build, train, and leverage, where do you feel that you need the most help right now? Away we go. Out of build, train, and leverage. Let's go. Just type away, type away. Beautiful. Good stuff. Good stuff. So that's the leadership advantage, and we're going to be taking you through each of those 3 key areas. Build, train, and leverage over these next couple of weeks, and we're going to flesh out these key areas. And I'm going to give you some frameworks and some templates that you can walk away straight away with to really help you with that process. The stages of this leadership advantage is this. I want to go through. Let me pull up this one. Cool. Here are the stages of the leadership advantage. So first we have working on you as the business leaders, as the business owners. Now, this is a really good definition of leadership. And I've shared this with you before. Leadership is vision plus communication. Vision plus communication. Now, let me share the reason behind that. Leadership is nothing unless you have any followers, right? You could be following yourself, which is totally cool. But leadership is about having the followers, and you could be following they could be following you on a number of different ways. They could be following you out in front, so you could be behind them, guiding them, or you could be out in front and they could be following you, right? So it depends on the type of leadership style that you have and then you like to work with. There's different ways there. But unless that vision is clear, where are they going, right? Unless you've mapped out where that direction is, unless you've mapped out, okay, here is our journey, here is our roadmap, here is our big picture. This is who we are, and this is what we believe in, and this is our goals that we want to move forward for yourselves and also for the business. Unless you can actually really have that clear vision, your team will leave you. All right. Your team guaranteed will leave you because they'll outgrow you. They'll outgrow the role and they'll start to look around and go, I'm bored. I'm not challenged. I'm over it. But unless they've got that compelling future, that vision, then they will stick around. So we have vision, right? Then we have communication. Now, communication comprises of 2 elements. The first element is the internal communication. So as a leader, what do we say to ourselves? What's our internal communication, right? So that's the first part of communication. It's working through that little voice, our beliefs, our behaviors around, oh, you're not good enough. Oh, yes, you are. Oh, yeah, you're not. Yes, you are. Get out and do it. So all that lovely internal dialogue, right? So that's the internal communication. The second part of communication is the external part of communication. So actually, how do you articulate your vision? How do you articulate where do you want to go? How do you articulate the expectation that you have for yourself and obviously for your team and obviously for your business? So that's leadership, vision plus communication. The next part of the stages is the emotional intelligence, EQ. Now, we've gone through different stages throughout history of leadership styles. Back in the Industrial Revolution, the 50s and 60s, where it was very do this and very much hierarchy, very much what I say goes. As it's progressed, it's really become the emotional intelligent leader. And what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is about understanding, having that self-awareness around yourself, but also then having the awareness around others as well. So, if you go into a room and you go, oh, this is a bit prickly, that they could have had a little bit of an argy-bargy before you got in, or there's a bit of a tension. You got that feeling, you got that awareness. It's then how do you act upon that awareness, right? So it's about having self-awareness around your own feelings and emotions around this situation. So if you're going in and having a crucial conversation, how do you actually respond? How do you actually manage your own emotions when you need to have those crucial conversations? Really good book. Get it? Crucial Conversations. So how do you actually have that? So then the emotional intelligence is when you actually, how do you manage other people's emotions? When there's confrontation or conflict, or you need to have resolutions, how do you actually manage other people's expectations and their emotions? So that's the power of emotional intelligence. So out of a leadership, where do you feel that you as the business owner need the most work right now? Where do you, just so I can have a bit of a gauge, where do you feel that you need, that you'd like to develop more of within the leader in you? Love to hear. Is it vision? Is it communication? Or is it the emotional intelligence? Awesome. Cool. So one of the cool things with communication is obviously doing the DISC profile. It's not everything, but it's a good start. Getting your whole team, and also we'll go through this in the recruitment stage, is getting your candidates or getting your team to do a DISC profile, because then you have a clear snapshot of what's important to them and how do they like to be communicated to. So, we're going to explore that a little bit more later. So, and now as we go through the next stages, we look at then the business component, and we look at things like your recruitment strategies. How do you actually write a killer copy when it comes to your job ad? I worked with a client the other week, and we put together their new job description for their office admin, office manager. And it was really interesting because they started out straight away with what they wanted in the technical component. It's like, no. This is like getting new recruits on board is like writing copy for getting new clients on board. We've got to shift in the mindset of, we've got to treat our team like clients, right? And this is so important. We've got to treat our team like clients. Same thing when we want to attract clients, we've got to do the same thing of attracting team. We've got to write killer copy to get them intrigued, get them interested, to tap into their values, to tap into their mindset, to tap into their attitude. Because we can teach the skill set, right? We can teach the skill set, but what is it that we want to really have in that person? What are the values? What's their attitude? What drives them? So looking at how do we do the recruitment, and how to write those ads, and then how to actually interview. What's the key interview questions that we should be asking? How do we go through that process? Do you have job descriptions for your current team members and also for future team members? And then what's that organization chart, that org chart looks like now? And what do you want it to look like over the next 12 months, 2 years? Mostly when we start out in business, we've got all the hats on the org chart. Oh, we're in sales, we're in marketing, we're in finance, we're in lead generation, we're in client fulfillment, we're everything. But when you get a clear roadmap and you actually go, okay, this is the utopia, this is where I want the business to look like. And as you grow and as you develop yourself, the business and your team, you start to replace yourself. It's a great feeling to do, because you can go, wow, look at where we started. I had all the hats, and now look at where I'm, and 12 months, 2 years down the track, and actually how much have I removed myself for the different parts of the role. And then we look at things like the back office. So, setting up things like payroll, super, or your liabilities, or the insurances associated to developing and managing your team. Then we go through to the next stage, is your team focus. And for those who've got teams, we go through an audit process of what's working and what's not working within your current team. Then we go looking at through expectations, and expectations is really cool. This is when it starts to get a little bit within the team, because as we go through and develop these new, what we call code of honor, it's the rules of the game. It's how we're going to play the game. Because what happens is people take what I call tickets. Oh yeah, but Johnny was late to the meeting, so I'm going to be late. Oh no, so-and-so is going to be doing this. Well, I can do that. And so what we do, we go through this process and getting really clear code of conduct, or what I call code of honor, because we pretty much live and die by it. So if you look at the military as a classic example, they've got a pretty strong code. If someone breaks their code, well, someone usually dies. So that's the nth degree of it. But what we want to do is to utilize that same principles within our business, because you know what? Business is harsh. So it's looking at that. creating those expectations and that code of honor. Then it's looking at the meeting. So, most businesses have too many meetings. How do we have efficient and effective meetings? How do we have meetings that are productive, to the point, and outcome focused? And then what tools are required for your team? So I've covered 2 areas there, business and team. Where do you feel in business do you need assistance right now with? And where do you feel in team that you need assistance right now with? Let's go. So business, where is it? Out of recruitment, job description, org chart, back office. And team, audit, expectations, code of honor, meetings, or tools. Where do you feel that you need the most help with right now? All right. And the last part, or second last part, is then the strategy. So it's looking at working with your plan. I just saw a little typo. Looking with your plan, you've set your goals, but what's your team goals? What's the people plan of what does the next 3 years look like for your team? And, like what we do at the intensive, reverse engineer that back to our 12 months strategy. And then once again, how do we incorporate our 90-day plans in around our team? All right. Then we look at things like a fast track program. So if we have eager beavers within your organization and they really want to fast track their success, well, how do we actually help them and map that out for them? And then how do we have a retainment program? Is it setting up another company and having share distribution? Are we going profit share? Are we doing commission based? How do we incentivize our team so we have it? We can start to create those retainment programs, because otherwise, if they're not stimulated, if they're not motivated, they will go. And obviously we don't want our good talent to go elsewhere, but how do we actually paint that picture for them? And how do we actually have those steps in place so they can see, okay, well, when I hit this, I get that. When I hit this and get that. We just finished an amazing commission structure with another client. And it was an amazing journey because it actually tied into the life cycle of their clients. And they were rewarded based from obviously new business, but also the retainment of the business. Because as we know, it's like 7 times more costly to get a new client than actually retain. So retainment was a huge part of their business. So we actually devised a commission structure to make that happen as well. So it's a really good incentive-based program. So there we go. So they're the stages of leadership advantage, and that's what we're going to also work through. So out of the strategy, where do you feel, and then the last bit is implementation. So obviously all that we're going to go through and implement those different stages throughout the next couple of weeks. So, how was that? So there we go. So I'm going to stop the share for the moment, and cool. Let's, so there we have it. There we have the different stages of leadership and the different areas: build, train, and leverage. So what we're going to be doing, and as of next week, we're going to go through into the build component. And the build component, awesome. Thank you, Danny. The build component is looking at that recruitment. I'm going to share some key little things before we finish up today around recruitment, and we're going to go deep dive into this next week. But the thing with recruitment is, as I mentioned, is looking at your copy. And there's 2 components and there's 2 trains of thoughts. I'm a real big believer of group interviewing, because the reason being is that people will really shine in groups, particularly for a sales role and for a HR role or a marketing role. Admin is a little bit different because they're usually quite a bit more reserved, but anything that's more outspoken or or a performance base, it's always good to do a group interview process. And we've got a system that we've been working on for years and years and years, and we've developed, and I've done it myself personally, and numerous other businesses have done it as well, to go through, and I'm happy to share that, and I'll go through that in a bit more detail later. But it really goes from, you have 20, 30 applicants, and then you get them you get 10 in a room, and you come out with your top 2 all in the space of a couple of weeks. So can you imagine trying to go through 20 to 30 interviews one-on-one? It does your head in, and you still got to run the business. Also with the one-on-one, with the recruitment process, it's looking at then what's that process of, okay, the job goes out. Well, then what? Do they email? Do they ring? Do they leave a message? Do they do a video? What's the next stage? So what we do is we clearly map out what that stages are. So you just go, oh, okay, now I need to do that. Okay, next step is that. All right, then they do that, and then what happens is that you've got these candidates, and they've pre-selected themselves, because what happens is that every part of the process you're actually you're edifying them. They've got to jump through a series of hoops even before you get on the phone, because so often I hear, poor quality. Yes, because it's like a client, you haven't qualified them, right? You haven't qualified to see if they're a good fit. And so even things like what we did the other week as with one of the new job ads that we did, was that they had to ring in they had to leave on they had to answer the 3 questions on their cover note. And the 3 questions were, what's been your biggest success to date? Why do you feel that you would suit this role? And how could you add the massive value to our business in this role? And now what we want to do is to hear how they respond to that. Now, ideally, you want them to send a video of those 3 or leave a voicemail of those 3 answers, but text, the written word, is okay as well. Now, the reason why we prefer the first 2 is that so we can actually see and hear their level of confidence, their level of articulation, the words that they use, because this is really important, because they are going to be the ambassadors for your business. Then when we go through, it's that whole recruitment process is now you've got a bunch of candidates that we're going to go through the interview, is then how do you do it? So what happens is that most people just interview and people love being sold to. What I find is most business owners and directors, they talk too much in the interview. They don't ask enough questions that are around values-based questions. And I'm going to go through once again a stack of values-based questions that you can ask in the recruitment, in the interview process, to really flesh out, okay, well, who's who, and how have they demonstrate these values? How have they demonstrated these beliefs and these behaviors and this type of attitude that we're looking for? Then we go through, with recruitment, we go through enrolling your team, ensuring that your team members are bought into this new candidate, and they go through. And I'd highly recommend is that some of your team members interview these candidates as well. The third process is enrollment and ensuring that they can actually do the task. We had one client who, from my not recommendation of that they should be started, hired them anyway, and they actually couldn't do a lot of the online programs that the business had. So the CRM systems, they said they could in the interview, but when it came to the crunch, they didn't. Another person hired another person as a prospecting person, and they didn't like making phone calls. Okay, so there's interesting once again. So it's getting them to demonstrate that skill for you, and to ensure that they've got that attitude and the technical component as well. Now, the last thing about recruitment, once again, we're going to go through this in a bit more detail next week, is always be recruiting. Always be recruiting. Now, why is that? Because doesn't mean you actually have to take on people. It just means you're always having conversations. It's like, your engagement plan or your front of mind plan with your social media. What are you doing with your team? How are you actually developing that for your team? And so that's what I'm going to suggest is always having coffees, always out there checking with candidates. They don't have to start straight away, but you're just checking to see how they're progressing. So when the time is come, you can pick up the phone and go, we're ready to go. And you've got people there. So I've talked a lot. I've hoped you've got a bit of value out of that this morning. What's been the highlight? What's been the big takeaway from you? Danny, I'm going to get you, we'll unmute you. And what's been your biggest takeaway from this morning? Greetings.
Greetings. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Biggest takeaway this morning. I feel like you've been pulling all of the thoughts that we've had over the last 3 months out of my head and answered so many questions. So that's fantastic. I believe we've been questioning about who we're going to hire next, and just watching you go through this process, I think we've been asking a few of the wrong questions, or maybe starting in the wrong spot, because like the example you gave us, we were looking at what tasks are they going to do? And that was the question of, well, what tasks are they going to do? So then therefore, who are we going to hire? And we haven't acted on it because we want someone to be able to grow with us, which is key. And I think that your mentioning of, look at the values, looking at not just the tasks, but treating them as a client. What's their vision? They need to be able to buy into that vision. And that we've had that roundabout conversation, but you just sort of put it all together. So there are a number of takeaways this morning.
Cool.
That sums it up though.
Excellent. Good to hear. Thank you. Good. Oh, perfect timing. Yay! Awesome. So there we go, guys. Have a wonderful day. So next week, we're going to be starting into the build component, and we're going to really go through those three key areas. And there'll be some notes that you can print off so you can take away, and you can actually start to implement, and you can start to fill in the details as you go through. So by the end of the next couple of weeks, you'll have a clear roadmap and clear three key areas ready to rock and ready to implement into your business. So there we go. Have a wonderful week, and looking forward to speaking to you soon. All right. Thank you. Bye for now.